Welcome to Dominate Your Day. I'm excited today to have Kendrick with us. Kendrick is someone I met through a mutual friend and then realized we had all these connections. I don't know, Kendrick, it was about 2 years ago. I met you for the first time
Yeah, we're
in one of
coming
your
up on two
networking groups.
years.
Yeah. And what I loved about you was your energy. I could feel your strengths right away, your woo. We'll talk about those in a minute. But what's really been fun for me is to watch you in this amazing transformation you're in. You've been leading in an organization for 18 years. You have 4 children. You're just doing all the things. And yet something made you stop and say, wait, I'm not my true self right now. And I want to go find her and bring her out. And today, we're going to talk about your journey and how that has this journey you're on. You're currently on the journey, which I love.
Hmm.
And our audience is full of difference makers, just like you, who want to make an impact. And so, speak to that person today that's out there, that's just on this road or thinking about making that big step like you made. And I just can't wait for them to get to know you. So, welcome to the show, Kendrick. And I kind of gave a brief view of you, 18 years in one organization, leading, making a big difference for kids. Tell the other side of your story that I didn't get to tell. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This is such a treat, and it's been just such a wonderful blessing to have met you 2 years ago and then had the opportunity to, work with you in different capacities, including, taking your authentic leadership class and reading your book. So it's just all been so beneficial in this current journey I'm on. So, yes, you gave a good kind of intro summary. I was at a private equity firm for 18 years. I served in a number of different capacities, but I was a partner there. I was one of 26 partners, one of four females.
Mm.
It's a high-paced environment, very cutthroat on a lot of levels, but also a lot of fun. As you said, I'm a high energy person, so it was a
Mhm.
good fit for me in that regards. Um, Personally, you said I have 4 children, so I'm very busy outside of the workforce. They keep me on my toes, but that's also been so fulfilling and fun. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell. I am currently based here in Dallas. Married to my husband. We met in Southern California, where I spent a chunk of my career. And then we moved here in 2017, and have been here ever since. So, excited to be here today.
Yeah, and Kendrick, one thing I think that our audience, some of them are aware of the book, some of them are not sure about what the book's name is and this authentic imprint. So I want to just take a moment and explain. The book is called The Internal Revolution: Lead Authentically and Build Your Personal Brand from Within. When you read the book, there is an assessment you can take called the Authentic Imprint Assessment. Anybody can take the assessment. And what it is, it's my passion to bring out not only your unique Clifton strengths, your talents, how you do things, but then understand your core values and then understand, oh, what is my personal mission statement? Whether you're leading a large group or a family or a nonprofit or whatever you're doing, what is my mission? And then what is my emotional recognition around that? And to keep that circle going with your strengths and your core values and your mission is the emotional recognition. It just keeps the wheel turning. So I had the pleasure of working with you along some other executives with strengths and loved it. And then I got to work with you with the authentic imprint. We had a class about in January, February, where we went through that. And we're getting ready to have a 1 day class called Authentic Imprint Experience. And I want our listeners to hear from you kind of what your experience was as you've known your strengths for a while and then you're starting to learn your core values and your mission. But let's start with strengths. What Tell the audience your 5 top strengths and how that has been a part of this transition for you and even making the decision. Yeah.
Okay, so my top five strengths. Number one, woo, which is for those who don't know, that's winning others over. I'm a people person. I love
Yes.
to be in front of people, business development. I love learning about people. So that's my number one. Number two is includer. Number three, communication.
Hmm.
Four, positivity. And number five, competition. So I think that was probably the best fit of the five in my private equity role. But my top four, obviously have been very beneficial just in leadership roles over time as well. So those are my top five. And then outside, Clifton goes beyond obviously top 10 and up to
Right.
34. And just outside the top five, I also have, a lot of, arranger and maximizer and things that you might hear more in, again, the financial world or whatever. So those come into play as well, but those are my top five.
Yeah, and it's so interesting for those that don't know their strengths. You can come to my website and get a link for it. But basically, you're 1 in 34 million. So the role that you had and why it fed you so long is because you had this amazing, it's a rare combination, Kendrick. And it's a combination of you're like this magnetic connector. When you think about the woo, you genuinely leave no one behind. That's your includer. Like, don't let
Mhm,
anybody get left behind. And then you can tell stories that motivate people, which is your communication.
mhm,
And then you're going to lift the energy in every room you come in, which is your positivity. And you're wired just to win. There's your competition.
mhm,
And when you look at that, you're just a leader who's going to build that culture of belonging while driving results, which is everybody's rare. And I want you to know this, everybody's rare in who they are. Most people don't know who they are and
mhm.
how to unlock it. When you first learned your Clifton strengths and you learned about the woo and you learned about some of these, the competition and the includer, was there some kind of what happened? What were you thinking when you first learned all of your talents?
Um, I think it made a lot of sense. So I would say, the word clarity,
Hmm.
said absolutely that, that is me. And and it's some confidence around that. I think things came into focus. Um, One thing, again, as I, more senior part of my career, what that clarity and understanding my strengths made me realize is that in leading from situations that I was able to control in my teams where I was, managing teams of people, I was utilizing those strengths and I was, kind of leading from the inside out more authentically because I was kind of in control of those situations in my leadership style
Hmm.
where it kind of came into conflict and I wasn't really able to tap and utilize to the highest potential my core strengths was that managing up component. And
Mm.
I think that's where I found maybe there was some frictions or at odds with the most senior leadership in how what the strengths that they valued and maybe again it was they value the competition and they valued some analytical and maximizer and all of these things but when it came to communication and inclusivity and other things that wasn't as important to them and so at times that's where I felt the friction and the challenge within my career was where I could control it. It felt authentic and I was leading from the inside out. Where I could not, I was leading more by like the role I played as,
Mm.
head of asset management or as a capital raiser and a portfolio manager. So I was leading by the role, but not authentically. And so those were at odds at times. And, then you start to question yourself like, why am I frustrated? Or why am I maybe not as engaged or just feeling like I'm not able to contribute to the level that I want to contribute? And so I think a lot of that came into focus for me when I really was able to hone in, on my strengths and do the kind of work that we've been doing together.
Yeah, and it's interesting because then you give yourself that permission slip to
Hmm.
say, there's something off here, let me discover it. So, and there's always something we can turn off in our strengths when they're getting in our way and turn up. There's always another strength we can turn up. So I'm sure you were using a lot when things didn't feel right. You're still using your woo and your positivity to get through.
Hmm.
But what was the moment that you kind of started going, huh? Things are feeling not aligned, and I need to really rediscover who I am and what I need to do. Was it at that moment that you were feeling a little off? And what do you think it was your strengths? And where did your core values come in here?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought up the core values because as you talked about, it's really this, pie, if you will, of strengths, core values, and mission, and this continuous, flow of pulling them all together that really unlocks that authentic leadership and really starting to feel engaged at work, working from your highest energy potential is when you pull it all together. And for me, the aha moment was, yes, I knew my strengths. I knew, okay, I had had success at this firm because yes, I am utilizing, these strengths in different capacities in my day to day. But when I really spent time understanding what are my values, and spending time on, well, do those align with my core strengths and how, I approach my day to day and my professional career? What I realized is that was the tipping point for me is that those were
Mm,
in conflict and I wasn't able to really tap into those. And that to me was the aha moment. It
mm,
was, core strengths and the authentic imprint that we
mm,
work on together through your class. It showed that. So my strengths were being utilized about 70% in my job, but my
mhm.
value alignment was only 60%.
Wow. So when you took the authentic imprint assessment, which only takes 3 minutes, and you can go on my website
Hmm.
and get the link, you can retake it now. You know, you took it before the class, and you can retake it now, and hopefully you'll see that your numbers have increased because you
Hmm.
did that work with values alignment. One of the things we did in the class, Kendrick, was we matched your strengths with your core values.
Hmm.
Where were the ahas there when you looked at your strengths and you looked at what are some of the core values that came through for you?
So core values, inclusivity,
Mm, there's your
and
includer, right?
and
Is that your
and
includer?
so to give you an idea of, the environment I was working in, you know, again, I don't want to put it under the umbrella of just private equity. I think it might have
Right.
been, more specific to my organization, but it had always been the leadership style of the people at the top. It was more about, um, information is power. So if you
Hmm.
can hoard information, you're more powerful. So
Mm,
that naturally led to not being inclusive and not wanting to, communicate and be transparent and that makes it difficult for teams, right, to really function if people are left in the dark or not everybody is rowing in the same direction because they're not aware of, again, initiatives or, what is, important, to the leaders.
hmm.
So that was one that was really difficult for me is that, again, the most senior leadership leaders at the firm didn't want to really share information. So a lot of times, it was hard to be in my role to manage my team if I didn't know, where we stood as a firm or where we were headed or, how I should be communicating to my team and giving direction. So that was a big one, the inclusiveness, because that is one of my top five strengths is that I
Hmm.
want to be cultivating a team where we're all working together, we're all aligned, have the same goals, and we're all, again, rowing in the same direction. And when I wasn't being afforded that information in various meetings or, conversations, that made my jobs really difficult.
Mm.
So that
Wow.
was a big one.
And you started kind of seeing that after the fact, kind of going, oh, that was the friction point for me. Is that what I'm
Hmm.
hearing?
Yeah, that was one of the big ones. That was definitely one of the big ones. Another one of my values is curiosity and growth.
Mm, mm-hmm,
And again, the environment and the culture I was in, everyone was always fighting. It's like, trying to elbow each other out because they wanted to be at the top. And so they didn't want people to grow.
mm,
It was, and that still exists to some degree. Whereas
mm-hmm,
I love to mentor.
mm-hmm,
And again, that, communication, that inclusiveness that are in my top five. I like to, help other people. That's also part of my mission statement, and you and I can get into that. But
mm-hmm.
I love to help people and bring them up. Um, and I think that was at conflict a little bit because people didn't, I think naturally they felt threatened, right? If you start to grow people and, you know, um,
Mm-hmm.
they could become a threat at some point. So,
Yeah, so all of that coming together, I like how you brought up that growth and wanting to
mhm,
grow. I was looking back at your bio and you've always been growing, whether it's getting your MBA at Vanderbilt or doing other stuff. When I saw you in your networking group, in your not I guess your intentional group, you guys were working on things and you're working hard on yourself. And that's why strengths were so powerful. It comes in as a tool of, oh, this is me and this is how I can manage myself and how I can keep things from getting in my way because our strengths can also get in our way, right? But how I see that in you, that growth of I just want to learn and I want to be my best self, but I want to be my authentic self. And I
mhm.
think, Kendrick, we've gone from an era of, back in the early 2000s, it was all about personal branding. And then it's moved into, no, who is my authentic self? And that's why I came up with the authentic imprint because it really is you being you, not trying to be someone else. And when you're in a situation like you were describing, where a lot of chaos, a lot of just churn, but not a lot of communication. You find yourself kind of drained, and especially you with positivity. How did you manage that?
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
Um, again, it goes back to what I could control. And I
Hmm.
think, again, I was managing teams, I mentored a lot of younger people. And to the extent that the things that I could control really would fill my bucket, give me that energy, that affirmation, because I was being authentic to who I am, right? And so those were the things that gave me the energy that helped me, on a daily basis, um, feel like I was making a difference and I was feeling fulfilled. It was everything else that we just talked about that was really the one, what was draining me and what was making me every day question, what is off? Why am I feeling this way? Right. And also feeling a little bit like capped and suffocated that I couldn't completely be who I needed to be or, again, shine from, within, on all levels within the
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah. So, what was the break, kind of the aha moment when you said, you know what, I need to take a step and pause and really work on myself and figure out what I need? Was there just a moment, or was it just a build up and you just said, I'm going to just take that walk in faith and just move on right now?
I think it was a buildup. Over time, I definitely had been feeling for years a lot of these, key themes I was saying, where, I just was wondering why I didn't feel alignment, but I didn't really know exactly. I couldn't put my finger on it.
Mhm.
Um, Again, that energy and burnout or even lack of engagement at times where I'd go through phases. I'm naturally a person who I'm very self-motivated and
Mhm.
determined. So I'm able to persevere and push through things, but I would find at times I'd kind of plateau. And, I didn't understand why I was just feeling, stuck. honestly,
Mhm.
stuck at times. And then naturally, again, some of those self-determination, I'd find ways to pull myself out, right?
Yeah.
And keep going.
Yeah.
Um, I think part of it's just maturity, perspective, again, putting in that the work I've been putting in. So over time, having these feelings, but then, again, part of my values are I'm curious. I
Mm.
want to grow. Um, and that's where I sought out, we have a mutual friend. I've been working with an executive coach, taking your class and, doing, work on myself. And I think that over time layered in with having these, thoughts and feelings is really, it all came to a head, really. And I
Mhm.
just said, there's got to be more out there. We
Mhm.
spend more time at work than we do at home with our families. And I
Mhm.
said, I want to go into work every day and feel I'm energized versus being drained. And
Mhm.
I want to leave my job every day and come home to these four precious children that, are growing up so quickly. And I want to be present with them and I want to still have energy for them. So I
Mhm.
knew, you know, I just said there has to be more out there. And I know that there is.
Mhm.
But you have to take a leap of faith. So it was a buildup, but I also put the work in and it was the growth and getting clear. But then, having the courage to take those steps.
Yeah. It's kind of like when we learn our strengths, which you spent 2 years on or a little bit longer, it
Mhm.
helps us explain the intent behind our behavior. It's not an excuse, it's just who we are. And we're not limited by our strengths, but it helps us know who we are. When you add the next level of the wheel in there, which is your core values, that's kind of the heart behind it all, right? And the decision
Mhm.
making. And you mentioned the growth and you mentioned, the inclusivity. Those were very important core
Mhm.
values to you. Let's move to the next part of the authentic imprint, and that is your mission. What came clear to you in the class about your mission statement and your personal mission statement when you took time to pause and really reflect and think? Because I think in your busy world and my busy world and our listeners' busy world, we don't take time to really reflect unless we get in a class, right? Or we're in church or something where we're really reflecting. But when you took that time to reflect and create your personal mission statement, what emerged for you?
So I had, written my personal mission statement, and I do think personal mission statements can evolve over time. And
Absolutely.
so I've had a couple different reiterations of mine over time, but they've the key themes are still there. And what I found as I've, kind of fine-tuned it is that it really is a very condensed version of a combination of my strengths and my core values.
Hmm.
And our mission statements are not, they're holistic. They are not just for your professional work life or just how you lead in your or live your personal life. It's everywhere. It's every day and everything you do. It is your guiding for me, my compass. It's my guiding compass. My values, my mission statement, and then if I'm utilizing my strengths, all of that working together
Hmm.
is really what on a day-to-day basis makes me feel fulfilled. It makes me feel energized. So my personal mission statement, my more recent, which I've had for about a year, it ties all those together.
Mm.
I mean, I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, go
But
ahead.
so it's you're going to hear some of my again my values and my strengths coming
Absolutely.
through, but it's through inclusivity and
Mm.
kindness I will cultivate beneficial relationships, the woo, that
Mm.
spark curiosity and growth.
Mm. There you go.
So, as a leader and leading authentically, that's going to be so important to be inclusive. Kindness is something I preach daily to my four children,
Mhm.
but I try and lead from kindness as well and empathy. But I want to use my woo through my networks, through, whether those are professional or personal,
Hmm.
to build and cultivate relationships and then help other people to spark that curiosity and growth in their own careers or their personal lives. To me, that's exciting. And, that's really important to me. And so anyways,
Yeah.
that's my mission statement.
Yeah, so what you've been working on it, which I'm not surprised with your talents and your values of growth. But what I hear you say is that once you were in the class, you were kind of reflecting on how that all worked together. Is that right? Is that, and then it,
Absolutely, yes. And
so,
again, I called it the compass, right? It's kind of that if you look at the different layers, like I kind of feel like the mission statements is really at the bottom,
mhm.
that, the foundation of it all.
Yeah.
And deep down, it is my guiding compass on, day to day, how I think through situations and, am I being true and authentic in these decisions? And does this align with, again, that internal compass mission statement?
What is the feeling you're going through right now as you've worked on those three? You're out there in the world networking, saying, okay, what's my next chapter and how am I going to find that next place to land that meets my calling? What is the feeling you've been experiencing these last 90 days?
Clarity and peace.
Mm,
Because going through change, as anyone knows, it's scary. It takes
mhm,
courage to change or make a change, or whether you choose to make the change or it's forced upon you. I mean, it's hard. It, a lot of feelings, will rise to the surface that are uncomfortable. I mean, change is
mhm,
uncomfortable, and going through change is uncomfortable, but perspective and having gone through, different levels of change over my lifetime, reflecting upon change, it's always uncomfortable at the time. It's hard, it's scary. But when I look back, it's been some of the best things that have
mm,
ever happened to me. And so I think, having that perspective has been helpful. So right now, just being clear on, my personal mission, my values, again, my core strengths, and being at this pivotal point really in my, professional career, I'm at peace more than I've ever been. So instead of it being, something that I wake up and I have butterflies in my stomach, and I have gone through some of that. I think that's
mhm.
natural and anyone's going to have that. And I have days, where I'm kind of going, oh, maybe I'm feeling like a little lost because I am in a period of transition. I'm I still at the, am feeling grounded and confident that I've made the right decision and that it's all going to work out.
Mhm.
And again, just there's a peacefulness to it that I'm headed in the right direction. And wherever I do land, that I'm going to be so much happier, energized. I'm going to be a better mom because, whatever that next career step for me is, I know I'm going to be energized and I'm going to be coming home present and not drained like I was before. So it's exciting.
What's the one word that you would describe yourself when you were in that the chaos and the just the confusion and the all the churn every day? What's one word you would use to have described yourself then? And you said now you have peace and clarity, but what was that one word back then that you would described?
Stuck. I just was
Yeah.
in this, it's like, again, I talked about, yes, on a day to day, maybe I was utilizing strengths and, you know, stuck plateaued at some point, but I just knew deep down there was so much more that
Mm,
wasn't being unleashed or untapped.
mm.
And, you know, I think that's where I was going, this can't be it, right? Like
Right.
there has to be more. And, you know, do I believe, not, I think it, for people, finding their passion and, waking up every day and saying, I'm living out my passion every day. Maybe that's a small percent of, people and, the world out there. for more people, I think, you can better your situation by
Mhm.
putting in this work, knowing who you are. And maybe it's not waking up every day and you are doing fulfilling your passion, but you are tapping into all of these things, your values and your strengths. And it's such a more fulfilling day, right? Again, you're engaged in your work. That's exciting. You're growing. You're feeling empowered. You're empowering the people below you. I mean,
Mhm.
I just think all of that is just a more fulfilling life. And
Yeah.
that's what I want for this next phase. As I reflect back on who I've been as a leader and as an employee, it's not bad or negative. It's just I want more for myself. And I know that there's more out there. So.
And that's your courage coming through. I mean, so many people just stay stuck because they're afraid. And that
Hmm.
breakthrough you've had and that peace you found is incredible. And you're actually, when we talked about the 20s, that was a move, or 2000 to 2000, probably 16 was all about, oh, here's my title is my identity,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And what you're experiencing is it's not about your title, it's about who you are authentically and how do you bring your best self in your community, in your home, in your work, and everything you do, because there's that energy.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, what does this look like in practice for you as you think about what we also talked about, which was emotional recognition? And how did that module, when we talked about emotional recognition, I know for me, I was tired of saying, oh, you need to go take this class on emotional intelligence and do all this. I wanted it to be a daily practice because this is a daily practice, working on ourselves. And so to define emotional recognition, it's really understanding what you're feeling at the moment, being able to name it, and then help yourself get through that moment so you can get to the next thing. How has that whole idea of emotional recognition as the multiplier that goes around your strengths, your core values, and your missions really boosted you?
So I think with anything, in order for something to become, habit or first nature, you have to practice it.
Hmm.
So, we can't just take your class and then, put everything on the shelf and
Yeah.
not, you have to be daily. So, one of the things we worked on and talked about in your class is just, that reflection or even if you're able to just journal, and that can be at any level. Sometimes for me, I just in my notes on my phone, I'll just quickly jot down a couple things to be able to reflect at the end of a week, like to go back and look. So it doesn't have to be I'm journaling and spending 30 minutes. It can just be little moments when I'm
Mm.
aware. So I've been,
Mhm.
that's something I've been doing and trying to take time each week to just kind of reflect what worked, where did I feel my best and my
Mm.
most energized, or, where was, what were some of my highs throughout the week? And then where were maybe some lows? And it
Mhm.
was that, what is the association there? Maybe why was I, feeling that way or feeling off? So a little bit of just taking that time to reflect through just, again, pausing and journaling. Um, how I approach each day. So, I did do some of this before, but I've been really trying to be more intentional. I start each day with gratitude and just kind of setting my own expectations for the day.
Mm.
So,
Mm. I
and
love that.
intentions, right? And obviously, our days get blown up all the time, right? But I try and start from a positive place of how I want to approach the day. Um, with gratitude, grace, and whatever I can control, I'm going to set those intentions for the day, knowing that life happens, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that's each day, and then again, I've been trying towards the end of each week to just spend a little time in reflection. Um,
That's so important. I think so many of us don't because we're comparing to everything else around us. And
mhm.
it's hard to just take that moment. So I applaud you for doing that, for taking that time to have that emotional recognition and that reflection. whether it's on I love the idea of just little mini moments, just going, uh-oh, what was that? Let me write that down. And then I'll take time later in the week to look at it. That's a great perspective, Kendrick. So as you think about this next 90 days, we're getting ready to start the next quarter. What is something that you want to focus on and that you want to use your strengths to help you do that? It could be anything. It could be something with your family. It could be something with your volunteer work. Could be something in, looking for that next opportunity where you can connect with people that share the same values. What is something that you see in the next 90 days that you want to work on and use your strengths and your core values and your mission to do that?
Well, I'll break it down in maybe a couple of different areas, but I have been, talking to groups to join them professionally in an organization. So this
Great.
has all been coming into play. And, I have even been taking job descriptions and putting them into AI and overlaying my Clifton Strengths test, my, core values and my mission statement. And understanding, is there alignment here or not, right?
Good.
Because, I can read something and think, but it's been kind of fun to tinker with AI
Of
and
course.
see, what it tells me. So that's one area. And then outside, I would say of kind of that professional piece in my personal life. Oh, my kids are learning all sorts of new things. I created these little vision boards for their doors of each of their rooms, and I have them go through each week, and we talk about their values and how they're going to each week. And I think I know their strengths. I mean they're still young, so but it gives me an opportunity, even within my own family, to take what I'm learning and just these little nuggets, share it with them and kind of plant the seeds with my children on having them, are they how them setting expectations for the week, what are their values and how are they going to go take those out into the world during the week. And then in addition, I'm plugged into a number of different groups. I'm very social, so I do a lot of things with friend groups. Um, that's where I've been finding different ways to really, utilize my mission statement and finding ways to help people. And it can be taking some of, my professional experience, work I've done, through all of this. And just finding ways to help other people that might be stuck or might be going through something. So, really paying it forward. I think that is something that's so important to me. So I've had a lot of younger people reach out to me, people I've mentored or new people getting, introduced to me. And to the extent that I can pay it forward and take the knowledge and the work that, the work I've put in, the things I've learned, and start to share that with others. And hopefully it helps them in some capacity.
Oh my gosh. I just heard your strengths, your values, all that in that story. It was like, wow. I mean, the woo part is definitely hitting for your networking. And for someone like you, getting out and being with organizations, and I'm in a couple of the same ones you're in, and it's fun to see you be your authentic self and those and connect with others. And what we talked about in the class was make sure that you are using your strengths because those are your energy centers. It's not about managing your time, it's about managing your energy. So that gives you energy. So using that during these next 90 days is going to be really energizing for you. And then the includer, I heard with your relationship building talents and helping other people that you've been mentoring, helping your kids. The communication you're using right now, which is number 3 for you, is that talent of influencing, helping your children think about their core values. Man, I wish I had learned my strengths and my core values when I was young.
Oh, me too.
And are you able to strength spot with them where you kind of think, oh, this one might have responsibility, this one might have empathy? Have you started seeing any of that with them? I know they're young.
A little bit, a little bit.
Yeah.
My oldest is 11, and
Yeah.
so they're young, but definitely there are some dominant strengths that pop out, and others I think are still, kind of evolving, and yeah, so.
And then I hear your positivity definitely with that just this time is like, oh my gosh, this is my time. You've always been working on your career. This is your time to work on Kendrick and bring out the Kendrick that was created years ago and to match and find that calling that you have. So I love that. Kendrick, as we wound down right now, is there one piece of advice you would give of all the things we've talked about today? What's one piece of advice or just something that you want to, if you could talk to the leader listening on the other side of this podcast, what do you want to share them of something that they could do differently tomorrow? And how can they be different after this podcast because of what you've learned and what you want to share with them?
I think if you're even listening to this podcast, that means that you're curious and that
Mm,
you have a desire, whether it's to grow, maybe it's change, or maybe you're just feeling, I use the word stuck or something feels off. Um, I would just encourage people to just, take one step forward, take one step forward to try and understand why are you feeling that way or are you wanting more? And, it doesn't, happen overnight. This is work and practice you have to put in. But there's so much more that you can untap in yourself that you probably don't even know, but to be, truly fulfilled, working, feeling, higher, energized each day. And so I would just encourage you if, again, if you're listening to this, to just, be curious and take those next steps, to
mm.
start to explore more about yourself. Um, yeah, I think
And
that would
it's not
be,
scary,
it's
right?
not
You did
scary.
it. You took the
Yeah.
courage and you did it. And then
Yeah.
now you've got this peace. And we always, when things get hard, they're getting ready to get better. It might feel hard working on yourself, right, Kendrick? You've been there, but then you're on the other side of that now. And you have all this space for freedom to discover and to learn and to grow. So
hmm
I love that. I
One
love.
one of my favorite more recent quotes is we grow through what we go through.
Mm,
So,
mhm.
sometimes things are tough, but we grow and we get better. And again, I talked about that perspective on I can look back at some really tough change I've gone through in life. And I'm just so glad. I'm so blessed that it happened because it happened for a reason. And, there
Exactly.
was really positive things that came out of those change and that growth.
That's awesome. Well, Kendrick, you showed up today as exactly who you are, which is so freeing and so powerful. And this is the work we're talking about. It's not trying to be somebody you're not. And you talked about that you were always trying to perform to that role. And then when you realized that wasn't who you are, that's when the freedom came in. So thank you for being here. And thank you for showing every leader listening what that looks like to lead from the inside out. And listeners, if you're curious about what we've been talking about today, what Kendrick's been sharing with you today, just know you can go to my website, danawilliamsco.com, and you can find all kinds of resources. We're excited about the next class coming up. It's a full day in-person live experience. And we hope, Kendrick, you can pop by and say hello to everybody. But it's really a time for us to reflect about ourselves and what do the next 90 days look like and how are we going to get there? And we've got people alongside us to help us in that growth. So thank you,
Well,
Kendrick.
thank you. It's
Yes.
really been a pleasure and I'm so grateful for, your guidance and your help and how you've really helped to unlock so much in this in me. So, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for doing the work. And this is the kind of people, it's not, I don't want to work with people that aren't difference makers and don't want to make it. I want to work with the difference makers, just like you, that want to make the impact because you're making an impact in so many ways. So I cannot wait to continue on the journey with you. And we'll check back in about six
Okay,
months and see how things are going. All
great.
right. Kendrick, when we talked about the authentic imprint, accelerator and you are starting really to apply your strengths with your core values, your mission, and the emotional recognition. What's the one thing that really you started applying that kind of stuck with you from all that and how you're using your authentic imprint, but this tool we talked about in the class? And what was that tool?
So one of the things we talked about, and I kind of view it as the three T's, the words are true, tune, and turn.
Mm,
So being clear and confident on my strengths, my values, and then my underlying mission statement, which is really my compass. It it provides that, framework and clarity on decision making.
mm,
So, as I'm, vetting opportunities for my, next step in my professional career, I'm pretty quickly able to weed out, is this, true
mhm,
to those things we talked about, all three of those? Um, does it have potential, but maybe I need to ask some more questions, or does it need refinement, or, starting to ponder those questions to see if before I completely cross it off, or is it just no? I mean, this is not in alignment, and
mm.
I need to turn away and not spend any more time on this. And that has happened a couple times. So,
Oh, wow.
yes, yes. I've been taking calls and hearing people out, but there's been things where I very quickly can diagnose that this is not a match. This is not in alignment, and quickly cross that off the list. I'm not going to spend any more time. So that's been really
Awesome.
helpful.
That's awesome. I was thinking about something that came my way yesterday and I was feeling the same way. I was like, oh, is this meant to be? What do I do with this? And being able to use that is to really go, is this
Right.
true? Do I need to tune it some or do I just need to turn away? And it helps us make that quick decision. That's
Mhm.
awesome. Kendrick, thanks for sharing that. And
You're
thanks for sharing
welcome.
your experience. I love it. Love it.